his ancestry, and we're going to then let Mark come and do our introduce our speaker, and also let him tell our speaker for next month. And thank y'all guys for coming. Bobby, you have the table. All right, thank you. Tell a little bit about my great grandfather that I stumbled on to it. When I first got into SCV, I got in under my great grandfather, William Thomas McKee. Rocked on there, happy as a lark. And one day I was over at a friend of mine's house looking at his scrapbook that his daughter had fixed up for him. And I run across an article there, and he stopped me. He said, "Hey, there's that article that tells about my grandfather shooting down the field of her sunburn." I got it, looked at it. I kind of sketched over it, and I happened to look down, and there was a name of the little letter right there. Winston Harris. I never knew Uncle Winston, but I heard a lot about the man. My daddy told a pretty good tale on him one time about his profession and him helping him. He laid sidewalk, poured sidewalk, different places. Some in Bolivar, Memphis, probably some here in Ripon. And one day there was my daddy and his brothers was helping Uncle Winston right out here at LaGrange, Tennessee. And they've been working down there several days, and there was a real older black man, you know, standing around there watching everything. And one day, black guy walked up to Uncle Winston and said, "Mr. Harris," he said, "you got the hardest working white boys I have ever seen in my life." And you'd have to know my daddy, because he was the hardest worker I've ever been around in my life. He didn't do anything easy. But anyway, that caught my eye right there. So I got to reading it, and the little letter introduced himself, and he was practically blind. He wouldn't recognize you on the street. Now this is Uncle Winston I'm talking about, the one who wrote the letter. And on down in the article, you know, said, "Health permitting, I hope to remain in West Tennessee 1 year." Well, after studying this letter and reading it about 100 times, he wasn't expecting to live for about another year. And it was published in the Bolivar paper on June the 4th, 1943. What he put in the paper. And he told about his grandparents, his great-grandparents. And then he kind of focused everything on his sister and her family. No other family members, just with my grandmother, who died in 1918 in the flu epidemic. And her family was the only one that he focused on. And he told about, got on down there and was talking about his father, William Thomas Lafayette Harris. And he joined up in the Middleton Tigers, Company A, 9th Tennessee Infantry, where he fought the first part of the war. And then after a short period of time, he and others that had horses switched over to Nathan Bedford Forest in Calvin. And then it said, well, he fought. He was in the 14th Tennessee Cavalry, Company A, under Colonel J.J. Neal. And he said he was in Forrest in his Alabama campaign, and I think that's where, Colonel Strait was brought down from Nashville on the boat to Florence, Alabama, with 2,000 Union infantry with mules. So here they are, they're gonna put infantry on mules. If anybody's ever rode a horse very much, you know that you ain't gonna just jump on a horse and ride him long. You're gonna get off. But anyway, that was a pretty interesting tale there that I read about that. And then they captured him over around Rome, Georgia. And that's where Forrest pulled his famous trick and outsmarted him, made him think that he had a lot more men than he had. He was on the famous dash into Memphis. And his company was in Tennessee, Virginia, and Kentucky streets. I guess that's what he meant. And that was a hard ride up there and a hard ride back. I read somewhere that some of the horses lost 30 pounds of weight in that trip up there and back. Said on the return trip, it was alleged that Sal, now that was my great-grandfather's nickname. He had two nicknames, Sal and Fayette. So both of them is the same person. He said that Sal was alleged to have consumed 25 biscuits. And the hostess inquired about his hollow legs that he had. Captain Ed Jacobs, and Captain Ed Jacobs' grandson was supposed to be here tonight, but he didn't show up, so I couldn't wait. He got separated from his company somehow there in Memphis. And he had to make a daring escape out of Memphis. And so he stopped at a farmer's house for breakfast one morning. And he informed him that Memphis was 9 miles away. Captain Jacobs said, "Don't know about that," because he said, "I know I'll run 30 miles. So in the Battle of Jackson, Tennessee, the command was much outnumbered, and they received orders to scatter, each man for himself. Sal climbed the fence into a garden and hid in the garden. And the Union soldiers made a search. And he said that he could reached out and touched the Union soldiers with the hands. That's how close he was. And then come dark, he made his escape back out then. In the Battle of Franklin, they received orders to lay down, which was complied with by Sal anyway. I don't know about these other two. A cannonball went through a man just in front of him and took a man's head off at his feet. Sal heard the remark, "Sal is killed," which he could not deny because he momentarily thought sure it was. Shortly after the Battle of Franklin and Nashville, Fayette and 12 others returned to their home county of Hardeman up here on furlough. The diversion, they entered the town of Bolivar, where the regiment of Union soldiers were stationed. They fired on the pickets, dashed to the center of town, emptied their firearms, and retreated. And they took a curious route over around Cranesville. And then south, and then west, which they crossed Hatchie River at Cox Ferry. Now, that was a long way around from Bolivar to Salisbury. They went way around And I haven't been able to figure out why they went that far around unless they was trying to dodge Bill and Hurst. I don't know. But anyway, they arrived at Colonel Burnell Saw's 3 miles from Salisbury for breakfast. So placing the picket in the direction of Salisbury, they were surprised by Colonel Fielding Hurst in the 6th Tennessee Cavalry, U.S. So they was surrounded, and they had to make a dash for safety. And this is where the famous confrontation between Colonel Hurst and Captain Ed Jacobs took place. Captain Jacobs' bullet entered the muzzle of Hurst's gun barrel, and it paralyzed his arm. I guess from the shock of it or something, I don't know. But anyway, Captain Jacobs, being out of ammunition at that point, said, "Colonel, I'm out of ammunition. If you'll loan me a pistol, be glad to shoot it out with you." So Sal Harris, he made a dash out back, jumping into a deep gully, burying his pistols in the sand, started climbing up the bank then. So looking up, he seen Captain John Ray up there with 2 pistols on him. So he raised his hand to surrender and climbing up the bank. They made him go back down and dig the pistols out of the sand, which caused much joking between the two. Because they were second cousins. He was, Captain John Ray was a second cousin to Fayette's wife. So they knew one another before and after the war. And after the war, they were good friends. They were all made prisoners. Sal was provided with a mule. They're on their way to prison in Jackson, Tennessee. On passing W.D. Bailey's place, Sal was standing facing the rear, telling the Union soldiers that they would rob graveyards and use tombstones for their backs and jam. So I guess he was trying to make a showing in front of some of his friends or relatives or something like that. But anyway, Colonel Hurst's men wanted to shoot him. And that's what they was expecting. They was expecting to shoot him. So Colonel Hurst made the comment that these men are too brave to be shot like dogs. They need to die like soldiers. And some 30 years later, Captain Ed Jacobs reciprocated by saving the colonel's life. And I can't tell you no details about that. That's just what is in this article right here. They were put in prison in Jackson. Later, Sal's wife visited him and furnished him a dress and a bonnet. This way, Sal escaped from the prison and then rejoined his command. And this was right at more or less at the end of the war, right after the Battle of Nashville and Franklin. John W. Jacobs said he slept many nights with his arms around Fayette Harris on the ground. ground for 4 years, changing over to a bed of goose hair. He made a pledge, I'll never harm a goose. So it sounded like the man had a little bit of a sense of humor about it. But, and I've found out some other battles that he was in. They, J.J. Neely, just outside of Bolivar up there, the new Colonel Hurst was coming toward Bolivar. And they set up and jumped them right there and captured all of their wagons, supplies, and everything, and chased them into Memphis, Happis. And one, here, 2 or 3 months ago, we was up in Trimble, Tennessee, the meeting up there, and I got a handout from Brandon Beck on the Battle of Oklahoma down there. He was in that battle down there too. He was in the Battle of Bryce's Crossroads. But this wasn't in this article right here. That's just a little research that I've done on my own outside this right here. It sounded like he staged some pretty good action. Thank goodness. If it hadn't been for this article right here, I wouldn't know nothing about Thomas McClellan Harris. And my next thing I gotta do, I gotta find him wherever he's buried. Because he deserves a Confederate flag for leaving his article for him. And I really appreciate what he did. He meant a lot to my family because I've heard his mother and daddy, my sister. Now my sister remembered, but I was born after he passed away. And they had a lot of good things to say about the man. And it's really been a good journey checking all of this out, putting it all together, because it's hard to understand the way it's written at all. But it's pretty interesting.